how did I get here? Who would have ever thought that a 4.5-pound premature baby, born somewhere in a shack in the dirt of a refugee camp, could ever survive? A few years later, in a new country, at 5 years old, her mom dies. Not only did I survive, I thrived. I thrived. I was honored in the national podium for excellence in mentorship and leadership in critical care, clinical practice, and mentoring. I thrived. You know, if the enemy had his way that day, I would have been dead long ago in that refugee camp. But God said no. No, because not that day and not today. Because he had a plan and a purpose for my life. And he has a plan and a purpose for your life. Would it be okay with you if I took you into my world for about 10 minutes into critical care? Just so that I can show you the lessons I've learned that God's taught me? Okay. All right, first lesson. CPR. Who's done CPR? Come on. Babysitting class? All right. Who can tell me what CPR stands for? Come on. Excellent. I'm glad you had to say cardiopulmonary resuscitation and not me. Okay. And do you remember? What do? Feet apart, hands down. 1 and 2 and staying alive, staying alive. Ooh, ooh. You don't really do that, but that's the song they do teach us to make sure we get our beat right. And why? Because this actually gets your heart pumping and your oxygen moving so you can breathe. So today, we're going to do CPR a little bit different. We are staying alive, but not that staying alive. Okay? CPR, compassion, purpose, and remember who you are. Can you say that with me? Compassion, purpose, remember who you are. Okay. You know, ICU nurses, we are a bit of a unique breed. We like lots of different things. We like to get right into those gory areas, our face and our hands right in the places where the sun does not shine. Okay? But what we're really good at is you get into the very nitty-gritty of things. We pay attention, and I can look at you, and right away, I know when something's not right. And what do? I act in a heartbeat. And why do I do that? I do that because in that moment, my action can change someone's life. Do you know that your action, any move you make, can change a person's life? Do you know that? I remember the day when Maggie was admitted, and she was telling me through her tears that only yesterday she was thinking about whether or not to paint the room in jungle theme or starry skies. Instead, that day I was holding her with her stillborn babies, crying with her. Preeclampsia, they say. It happens, it just comes. And then there was that day when I had to tell Bill, his wife, I'm so sorry. You can't go inside. And that night, I had to watch Bill die alone. No, with everything in me at those moments, I screamed and I said, no, this is not okay. You know why? How did I get here? I know you're not nurses, but you're human. And perhaps not too long ago, you might have had similar experiences where you felt the pain and the suffering. And with every part inside of you, you had to fight this internal, profound war with your moral integrity that comes up against our humanity that says something is not right. That there's something in our world and our structures and our systems, our work that tells us this is the way, walk in it. But everything inside of you and me that we know what is right and wrong says, no way, that is not the way. That's moral injury. I felt it many times as a nurse, as a human. You feel it so bad where sometimes you depersonalize yourself and you disconnect. And you isolate because it's better that way, because then I don't feel. I don't want to. It hurts too much. Or I take it to the place where, you know what, I gave everything that I did. I'm emotionally exhausted. And I just can't give any more that day. Not at work, not at home, not to my kids, not to me. I just can't. And that guilt and shame would bring me down so low, and it feels like I can't even get up. But not today. Not today, because I remember, like myself, when I was that preemie baby, somehow the enemy had a different plan, but God knew better. So someday when I'm in that place, I go, okay, not today. I'm going to rise and I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember that in my deepest places of pain and suffering, there's beauty to be found. There's beauty to be found in our pain and in our suffering. It's like, I'll tell you another story. Lynn said to me one day, Lynn's a novice nurse, and she goes, Fanny, you teach me how to save a life and do everything well, but what you did not teach me in school is that. Do you know what that is? That was 17-year-old Keith who did not make it that day home. And what I want to tell you is this, that we can do so well with so many things and pain and suffering happens, and we get to that place of, we have to remember God has a different plan. How did we get there? You see, my vocation as a nurse isn't my identity. It's not who I am. Jesus himself knew that. Yeah, he was a good carpenter, and I'm sure his carpentry skills were pretty darn good, but that was not his identity. He had to take the cross upon himself, walk through the road of Damascus, through the pain and the suffering. Why? Because he knew who he was, that God, the God above, who has compassion, who is gracious in love and compassion, abounding so much more than all we can ever ask for, had a plan and a purpose. So help me out, help yourselves out. When you feel like you want to disconnect, remember, it's not your usual 1 and 2 and 3. Remember There is a God who is compassionate and kind, abounding in love, who has a purpose for your life. Remember who you are and who He is.